Saturn joins Neptune in Aries, Jupiter enters Cancer, and a full moon in Sagittarius. Just a few things that are happening in the stars. Yellow, Ralph McIntyre, instructor here at Kepler College in the Astro Mapping program. I teach the Geodetic mapping system. And one of the things I do is help you understand how to work with the astrology and how it affects you at your location. So in this video, I'm going to talk about the astrology of June 2025 and where different planets are affecting different parts of the planet and how to utilize these energies. I rely heavily on evolutionary astrology, so whenever I talk about astrology, I talk about from the soul's perspective. But you can use this information in any way you use astrology and interpret the planets any way you interpret the planet. The energy will be the same. And so the geodetic system takes the astrological degree and maps it to the lat-long system of the Earth. And so depending on what degree the planet is, that's the degree of longitude that the midheaven will be. So for instance, in Aries, 1 degree of Aries is 1 degree of east longitude. So anyways, without any further ado, we're going to get into some maps and talk about what's going on here. And this is stuff that I go over in depth in my class. So if you're interested in finding out more about this, I highly recommend taking my class. It's a hands-on class where I dive deep into helping you work with this energy by using real-world examples exactly in the same way I'm about to do in this video. So without any further ado, we're going to get into some maps and get into it. So we're looking at a free piece of software that I have available. If you go to geodeticmap.com, you will be redirected to this web page. And the thing that's nice about this is that you can look up any date and see what's going on from the geodetic mapping system. And so we're going to start by looking at the 1st of June, which we're looking at right now. And so one thing that's a little quirky about this is depending on where you are on the planet is the date you need to put in. So here in the United States, because we look up astrology on UTC time, and UTC time is quite often the next day, we put the date 1 day ahead of where we're looking. And so when you play with this, it'll kind of become clear. And so the first thing I want to kind of point out is a couple things that we're going to look at as they move across the globe. And so we'll start with the United States, then we'll go over to Europe. I'm not going to look at everywhere in the world, but anywhere in the world you are, you can look and see what's going on. You can find out exactly when some of these transits are hitting you. And it's really interesting. This program that's free to use has a lot of information. You can hover over the planets to find out what sign they are. It'll show you the least and most aspected planet. You can look up any date. You can go all the way back in time. I want to say back into the 1600s, 1500s. You can also look ahead. And so it's really interesting. You can look and do studies with this, or you can kind of see what's going on in the world for you. And so that's what we're going to do today, is we're just going to kind of look at what's coming up in June. So the first thing I want to do is I want to point out the fact that during the month of June, there's a few things going to be coming across the United States that, depending on where you live, you might want to take advantage. So I talked about this in my last video, but Pluto here in Aquarius is sitting there off the west coast. Uranus is up there in Taurus. So up in the Seattle area, all this is dealing with this. And the slow-moving planets stay in one location for a long time. So Uranus will be up there for a while. Pluto will be up there for a while. The planets that move fast through the zodiac will actually move fast across the globe. The moon being the fastest moving because it moves the fastest. But a couple planets that I want to talk about is the sun is going to be moving from just in between Arizona, New Mexico, Utah, Colorado, across. And now, if I go to the end of the month, we can follow that same moon line, and it's went all the way across the United States. So if you live in between Colorado and West Virginia, at some point, all this area, the moon is going to be coming over your location, and you can get an exact date. And depending on that date, you can utilize this energy to work with. It's a good time to potentially launch things, different aspects of your life. You can actually use this energy just like you would use a normal transit. So it's like if you have a new moon, what do? So it's like when the sun comes across your location, and depending on where you live on the planet, 4 times a year, the sun will come across your location. And so by understanding that, the sun IC line is what's moving across the United States. And so so if we go back to June 1st, so if you look up here, you'll see June 1st. So the sun will be moving from just in between Arizona, New Mexico, over into the East Coast. Mercury will be moving as well. Mercury will move from where it is in the beginning of June, just kind of right in the middle of Colorado, all the way off the coast of the East Coast. And all the fast-moving planets will do this, the moon as well. But the one that I really want to point out is Jupiter. We got Jupiter coming into Cancer. And Jupiter in general is a great planet to kind of understand when it hits your location and take appropriate action. Because with Jupiter, from an evolutionary perspective, the more you take action with Jupiter, the more it can kind of be expansive in your life. And so if you look at Jupiter is kind of like right on the edge of Iowa in the beginning of the month. And then at the end of the month, it's over there in Indiana. So all of this area right in here, Louisiana, Alabama, Arkansas, Chicago, Wisconsin, Illinois, all of this area, you're going to have Jupiter coming over your location sometime this month. And so by going to geodeticmap.com, you can play with the dates depending on where you are, look and see exactly when this happens. Now, again, we can go over and look at this in Europe. Very similar thing is happening in Europe with different planets. For the most part, like Venus is going to be moving through Egypt, Romania, Ukraine, which is hopefully going to be good with all the craziness in the world right now. Some of these areas could use a little Venus love, calming maybe. Venus being in Aries right now, but it'll move into, I want to say, Taurus at the end of the month. And so by looking at what's going on, so like, for instance, the east coast of Africa, the west coast of Africa, Jupiter's going to be coming through at the beginning of the month. And then if we scroll out and look over here, and so then in the next couple of months, it'll be moving on to the coast. And so the other area that I wanted to point out in Europe is that Venus. So you'll look at Venus is going through this whole area right here, which could be very auspiciously good. Mars is also going through this area. So if you look at the beginning of the month, Mars is on one side of Iran. And if you look at the end of the month, it's on the other side of Iran. And so depending on where the planets are, what's going on in the world, sometimes, not often, you'll find things that will happen during those times quite often. This is how I got into geodetic maps to start with, is I started to notice a lot of times world events and geodetic lines would correspond. So we'll talk a little bit about this. So the other thing I wanted to look at is this first map we're looking at is the full moon. So we got the moon in Sagittarius. So you can look at, in the United States, this is happening right here in the Dakotas, Nebraska, Texas. A lot of energy there. Jupiter's going to be right there. This is a Sagittarius full moon, so that Jupiter energy is going to be very powerful. And then again, if you go over into Europe, this is happening for Europe. It's happening off the coast of Africa here, but it's also happening in India, in Nepal, all of this area right here is that full moon energy. And then if you go into Australia, that full moon energy is right off the coast here as well. So one thing that's kind of auspiciously interesting, and I'm not necessarily making any predictions, and I don't want to necessarily get political at all, but if you look at this full moon, this is the full moon energy, but that Mars line is going right over Tehran in Iran. The next day, I want to say, or the day before the full moon on the 9th is actually when it hits Tehran exactly. Apologize, my internet's a little slow. And so by understanding this, by examining what's going on in the world, you can start to anticipate things, but you can also utilize this energy. So if Mars is coming through your location, if Jupiter's coming through your location, however you would act appropriately if those were transiting your life in your chart, is the same way you can use those as far as working with the energy. This is something that I go into extensively in my class. So if you go to Kepler College and look at the astro mapping, you'll see when I teach that class. All the links that I'm talking about will be in the description. You can also go to my website, ralphmcintyre.com, to book a session with me. I also have a mapping software website, Astromap Links, that will give you access to astrocartography maps. And then the geodeticmap.com is an easy way to get to this map. So I wanted to kind of make this a little easier to see. So again, this is June 1st. We're just looking at the fast-moving planets. So you see Mars over here. We'll see the sun. So if you hover over the lines, they're all color-coded. You can also hover over the planet names up atop to get what sign they're in. There's a bunch of information on this map. I find it super fun. If you're into geeking out on astrology, you will really enjoy playing with this. And this is what I go over heavily, and how to use this, how to work with your own personal astrocartography map, geodetic. And the nice thing about geodetic mapping system is you do not need birth times. Because it's tied to the zodiac, the only planet that kind of changes throughout a day is generally the moon. And so you can look up events, you can look up people's maps. It's the only mapping system that you can use without a birth time. So if you're working with someone that does not have a birth time and you want to actually help them understand what's going on the globe for them, you can use the geodetic mapping system. And this free program that anyone can use, you can look up anyone's birthday. Just go through, and look up the birthday. But so by understanding, you can see this, and if you go to the options, you can click on and off whatever lines you want. To make it easier to see. So Mars is going to be moving. So it's like if at the beginning of the month, Mars is over here right on the edge of California, Arizona. At the end of the month, Mars is, on the edge of New Mexico, Texas, right there. So this area right here is where Mars is going to be moving. So again, you can understand. And then in Europe, it's the same thing. So it's like, the beginning of the month, it's on one side of Iran. On the end of the month, it's on the other side of Iran. And so, by understanding what the planet's energy is asking, you can act accordingly. You can plan accordingly. You can plan trips. You can plan interactions with different areas. It would be a good month to be praying for calm, peace in that area. Some of the other planets that you can pay attention to, like Venus, is moving across Ukraine. In that, so Venus is the beginning of the month, kind of right over here, on one side of Egypt, on one side of Ukraine. At the end of the month, it's, off into Iran. So it's moving through this whole area through the month of June. Again, South America, Brazil, all my Brazilian friends, Venus will be moving across Brazil through the month of June. So by understanding when Venus is hitting your particular location, by looking up the dates, you can utilize this energy. And again, so some of the beginning of the month, so what I've done here is I just set two maps up, one at the beginning of the month, one at the end of the month. And then you can zoom into different dates. Like I went and zoomed in exactly when Mars was going to be hitting Tehran, just because I'm kind of fascinated with world politics. There's a lot going on there. Some of the events that happened in Iran, there was energy with Uranus that just went through. Some of the recent stuff, and so it doesn't always happen, but very often you'll find that these lines are associated with current events. So for all you folks out there in YouTube land that are into geeking out on astrology and want different ways to look at astrology and utilize astrology, this is a free app that you're welcome to use, but I would highly recommend taking this class with Kepler, and we'll spend time really diving into how to utilize this energy. There's a bunch of other techniques that I use that help you understand how to work with the astrology of the location, how to work with the transiting astrology of your location, and how to thrive with the astrology and enjoy life. All right, thank you so much for watching. Tune in again next month, and I will go over what's going on for that month. And have a spectacular day.